really the goal is just to use our stories to bring veterinary medicine to life for the pet caretakers of the world. And we're doing it because we believe that educating these caretakers is the most powerful thing that we can do to improve the life quality of all of the pets that we love. Okay, well, good morning, or afternoon, or evening. I don't know. It's morning here, anyway.
It is morning.
I'm Dr. Natalie Keith.
I'm Dr. Josiah Dame.
Northside Veterinary Hospital, and this is Vet Tales.
Yes.
Yeah. We're both a little frazzled right now, if we're going to be honest.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's part of the job, you know. It's been a kind of like a chaotic last 30 minutes, especially knowing that we just kind of like have a tight schedule trying to get in here and stuff. So it's easy to get overwhelmed, but anyway, so today, this is a tough one though.
It is a tough one.
Yeah. Yesterday, I believe it was according to Bethany, our office manager, Rainbow Bridge Day.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess is that something that everybody just like knows? Like
no.
That Rainbow Bridge is like.
Oh, like that's like what people talk about? Probably not.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I knew about it until way later.
Yeah, like I was definitely like, I remember, so basically we're talking about euthanasia, right? And so I'd be in these euthanasia appointments, and I noticed there was this pattern of people that would say like the Rainbow Bridge at some point during that journey, that process.
I think it comes from a poem.
It is. I looked it up this morning, actually. I've never read the poem. I refuse to do so.
Yes, I don't think I've read it all the way through. I think I've started it a couple times. People typically will post said poem, which I'm sure if you Google, you'll find it.
Yeah. There's actually a website, because that's what I did. It's the Rainbow Bridge, like, webpage, but then, like, the author's anonymous.
Okay. It's very popular.
Yeah.
A lot of people will get it on plaques and things.
Yeah.
And things like that, so yeah.
Yeah, it's, so Rainbow Bridge Day is basically is what we are going to use as the cause for us.
Springboard.
Yeah.
To talk about
Euthanasia,
which is not the most fun topic.
No.
Obviously, it's not fun at all.
But but it is, as much as it is not fun.
It's important.
So important.
It's very important. It's not fun, but it's very important.
Yeah. Like, so my first memory of, like, euthanasia in general is me being interested for the first time in becoming a veterinarian, and, like, I was talking to my dad, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. Like, I don't know if I can do it. And he said, well, honey, you have to be strong enough to be there for the ones that need you. Like, you can't save them all, but you have to be strong enough to be there for the ones that need you. And that was like the statement that changed my, I guess, mind about being willing to confront that fear. Yeah,
because it definitely, when you talk about the job of being a veterinarian, euthanasia comes up because most everyone knows that, do it, and they know that that's part of our job, and they're like, I can never do it. And yeah, like, sometimes it's tough.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really taxing. And
what did you think about euthanasia before you went into, like, the field? Like, just, like, when you first started thinking about being a veterinarian?
I knew that it was, so my introduction to Northside was emergency hours years ago, where my dog had been hit by a car, and Tracy euthanized Dusty.
I did not realize
This is before we were clients, and then we became clients after that. And how I was introduced to y'all as a clinic, and seeing, because I tried to take him home with that situation, and I tried to push through with pain medication and see if he'd recover, and he didn't. And we did end up euthanizing, and just how gentle and kind y'all were. So my view of euthanasia, I'd never had a bad experience because my euthanasias have been through y'all, actually. The ones that at least I remember as a more so high school, middle school adult. So when they're gentle, it's peaceful, which is the goal.
Yeah.
What does euthanasia mean?
Good death. Good passing. Yeah.
Good passing in Latin.
Yeah.
Latin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the goal, is that hey, my dog was suffering,
Mm-hmm.
and we were able to let him pass peacefully.
Yeah.
And not be in pain anymore.
Yeah.
So I have good experiences with it.
Yes.
Before I became a veterinarian, and then because of that, I wanted to continue that pattern.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Mother Nature is stinking brutal.
It's brutal. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, like, I guess as we're having this conversation, I have all these memories flooding in my head.
Yeah, this is like a just personal memory time, probably.
Yeah, it is a little bit, and it's like we talked about earlier today. Like, it can be emotionally triggering for people, even for us, because a lot of how we survive this is to compartmentalize, but then when you're like in this situation where you're purposefully bringing this all to the front.
Yes.
But so I go through these conversations with clients, and I reflect on my own personal experiences a lot to help them kind of like navigate as well. And I find there's like a lot of times there's like this parent situation. So like we might have like a mom or a dad or both in there with this older patient that's, clearly terminal. Mm-hmm. And yet we have younger kids in the family that are not on board.
No.
With moving forward, which is super normal for not everybody in the family to like be on the same page.
Yes.
So my next memory with euthanasia was I was 17. Now, we grew up on the farm in rural Oklahoma. Veterinary medicine was a very different thing back then. This has been 23 years ago now.
Yeah.
And my old dog, looking back, I know now that she was an old Labrador that had diabetes. Like, I know that now. But at the time, I didn't really have, like, that background or that foundation of knowledge. And I just knew that my dad one day decided to take her in and have her put down. And I was so angry with him because I felt like he murdered her, which is, a lot of people walk into that thinking it's like murder, which is a really harsh and scary word.
Yeah.
But it gets applied a lot. Like when I hear families going through this decision-making process, like there will be someone in the family sometimes that is like saying that that's how they feel like it is. Because it is a very heavy decision to make.
And no one grieves the same either.
Yeah.
So you can never, definitely in family situations when it's not just like one or two owners, it's like a whole family. People, definitely younger kids who haven't experienced loss before.
Right.
This is going to be a grieving process that they've never been through before, so this is the first time they've experienced it, so they're not going to experience it or get through it as quickly as some other people may.
Yes.
And some people, don't show any emotion as they're going through it, and that's not wrong either, because everyone processes grief differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was interesting, like what you're saying about like people not having, when they haven't experienced that kind of loss before in terms of death, especially of a loved one of any kind. So there's this website called The Lap of Love, which is a great website, resource. Great resource. Yeah, and they it's two veterinarians who started an in-home euthanasia service. We don't actually have it in Oklahoma, or at least
I think they're trying to get it in Oklahoma City. Or they may have a vet in Oklahoma City, but I think it's one.
Yeah, not. Yeah, we don't have it where we are per se, but in general, like if you're in a more populated area, certainly that it exists, and they've compiled like this really great resource for veterinarians as a whole, and I was reading it kind of just briefly this morning, kind of just thinking about it, and they were talking about this interesting trend that they've noticed since they created their business or organization group, and that essentially, like, let's say you have a family, right? Mm-hmm. Family A, and they have a old dog, let's say a golden retriever with cancer, and as that pet is going through this terminal journey, like this family A will maybe go through all of these things and all of this time and all of these try different like therapies or regimens or medications or whatever, like supports, and they will go, let's say, 6 months through a journey.
Yeah.
And the pet will reach this very critical stage before they go to euthanasia. The same family, let's say, has 2 years later, their 10-year-old is now 12-year-old, and now this 10-year-old has the exact same cancer and it's the exact same thing. They may only go through like a month.
Yes.
Because they recognize, like, because I think we all have this fear of like giving up too soon, or like we feel like we're quitting, or we want to try everything, or like we just are uncomfortable with saying goodbye, which of course is normal.
Yeah.
But like when you've seen what Mother Nature does through that process, you become less willing to see your beloved pet have to go through all of those things when you know what the outcome's going to be.
And I mean, I've been through that. You probably remember Jack,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a lung tumor.
Yep.
Probably maybe cancer somewhere else too eventually, and we just tried to manage him palliatively. We did not even do chemo. We just did steroids and some other medications for symptoms, and which is never wrong.
None of this is wrong.
None of this is wrong. Yeah. So we were just doing more palliative care just to kind of make him comfortable, and we saw him go through pretty much like most end stage things of life, and at the very end we did opt to euthanize.
Yeah.
And now that I've been through that and saw how skinny he got, et cetera, personally, I may not go through that again if I may, do it a little sooner than what I would have done for Jack.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I was just out of vet school, my husband's 17-year-old border collie developed bladder cancer. And she actually, prior to her bladder cancer was like spry, like did all the normal dog things and was just happy as a clam. And she initially responded really well to treatment for the bladder cancer, and then eventually it relapsed. And my husband did not he felt like I was in a better position to like understand what was going on and decide these things, and then I was simultaneously like, oh, I'm not going to decide for your dog. I mean, she'd been my dog for like, gosh, I don't know, 8 years by then too, but it was definitely, she was 9 years old when we first started dating, and so whatever, all this to be said, I learned the very hard way a thing that I say to clients all the time now, which is that the only way to know that you're not a little bit early is if you're way too late.
Yeah.
And because everybody's looking for this right time, like this is the day, this is the right time. I'm not too early, I'm not too late. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, and it really doesn't. And I've been through that too with like a cat, where I was like, oh, I don't think it's time. And then sadly I lost her at home. Yeah. Which ended up being more traumatic than if I had, euthanized her when she was doing pretty poorly prior. So I've kind of experienced all spectrums of that. And that's really, like, losing a pet at home, a lot of people, that's kind of what they idolize, that maybe we'll just pass in our sleep. Her situation, she was a heart cat, so she had heart disease. So I knew that she was kind of a ticking time bomb. She wasn't feeling well a couple weeks before, and then I came home one day after being gone for the day, and we found her passed away, and that was really hard. Yeah, because I was like, we weren't here.
Yes, and so then you're worried about like what was going on during that time.
Yeah, so you're right. It's you don't know when the right time would have been until you're past the right time almost. Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like that, like you're saying, like that idealization of this passing at home or whatever. It does happen. Like I was telling Dr. Dame earlier today, I'd had a 14-year-old Catahoula mix that we had rescued when I was in vet school from a guy who broke his hip and couldn't take care of her. Anyway, so she was like 4 when she came to us, and we had her for a decade, and she always had this spot in the yard that she liked to beside the house, where she kind of like wallowed out this little kind of like I don't know, bed in the ground essentially, and she loved to sleep there. And so she went outside one day, and then I went out to go check on her or whatever, because I thought she whatever
which should be coming in at that point, and she was just curled up asleep and passed away, which is just astronomically rare.
Yeah.
And so some people then, like, freak out, like, they feel like that they did something wrong by, like, not catching that, but that's just not it either.
No, it's not. Yeah.
It's so unique.
It is very unique. I don't feel like it's the norm for that to happen.
Well, and every, like, transition is unique. Like, depending on so many factors. Like, what is that? There's not a great, I think that's why there's so much, like, unknown, is because that is so personal for every animal.
Yeah, even if you give, the same pet and the same disease, the timeline from being sick to you have a chronic illness / terminal illness to why or when you euthanize is going to be different.
Right.
Because there are external factors that are out of our control a lot of times. Finances do come into a play, obviously. Definitely with these terminal illnesses, where there may be some kind of symptomatic therapy, but it's extremely cost prohibitive for some people. In those tough situations, euthanasia may be decided on a little earlier. Again, not wrong, if it's going to prevent suffering of the pet.
And there's physical barriers too. Like
100%.
If you're less able-bodied at some point and you have a large dog, then you're not going to be able to consider some things that you might be able to do if you are more physically able and have or have a smaller pet.
Exactly.
There's I think of this one dog that comes to mind. There was this big German Shepherd, and he went into renal failure, and the owners actually drove him all the way to Dallas for dialysis at like $12,000 a treatment. But they were able to financially, and they were able physically to help this dog, because he's a big dog, a big German Shepherd, 100 pounds easy. Getting him in and out of the vehicle, they could make the drive. They had the flexibility in their schedule, and still yet, like, he only probably I think maybe like 3 months extra that we received with him, which maybe it's totally okay for that to be the path you choose, and it's also totally okay for it to not be the path you choose.
Yeah, and that's where it breaks down, is everyone's situation is different.
Yeah.
And so we're here to offer gold standard recommendations when it comes to these terminal things and/or chronic things.
Yeah, so clients can decide for themselves.
Decide for yourself, yes, at the end of the day, because it is your family that you're deciding for.
What do you say when people ask you, because I get this question all the time, so I'm sure you do too, they say, what would you do if he were your pet?
Yeah, majority of the time, I do tell people, I have not been through this before, because personally I have not had a pet with diabetes. I have a personal pet, so if someone were to ask me that, I'd be like, well, here is what medically is recommended. I personally have not had a pet with diabetes, but this is what I recommend. That's such a tough question. On occasion, if it's cancer related, because I have some older dogs who have had cancer, I've had a dog with a broken back, I will say, this is my experience, and I'll tell them a story. But I said, but here's gold standard. Here's what's recommended medically. You do end up having to make your own decision in this situation.
You want to tell people what gold standard means?
Yeah. Gold standard is essentially the papered recommended kind of protocol for treatment of an illness.
Like removing all barriers.
Removing all barriers.
Here's what we could potentially do.
You could potentially do. So if like finances aren't a concern, if you are willing to or have the time to drive a patient to a different city to get treatment.
Physical constraints, time restraints, financial restraints, emotional restraints.
Exactly. Do this, then this is gold standard. So probably the easiest one to talk about would be like lymphoma. So a cancer.
Yeah.
Gold standard would be to go get chemotherapy.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, for my dog Jack, gold standard may have been some kind of chemotherapy, maybe a surgery, but due to the location, probably not. But that may have been gold standard, but due to my family probably not having the time to drive him to Dallas or Oklahoma State at the time, or Tulsa, to have those things done, we opted for steroids and just palliative care until we were like, okay, his quality of life has diminished enough that it's time for him.
Yeah, and it's like, it's hard because I never want someone to think, because I'm saying this is gold standard, like that like you're like silver or bronze. You're not choosing that, because I wouldn't. Yes. I think maybe over the years I have become more vocal about what I really would do in that situation. Granted, you never know until you're in that situation. Like, like if I were, abducted in a parking lot, what would you do? Like, until you're in that situation, you don't know.
Yeah.
But you can think it through and just be like, here's what I've seen with other patients of mine that have pursued this. This is what this looked like.
And I have done that. I've gone, okay, this is what I've seen.
Yeah.
This is the roadblocks that they hit while they're doing it.
This is the success that they found with this. This is what they valued in it, or felt like wasn't worth it.
Here's a side effect I saw with this, them going to get the gold standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, like, at the end of the day, clients just really don't, I think they value our opinion, but they also fear our judgment. And so I really try hard to, like, make sure I'm clear about, like, I support you with whatever you decide. Like, if you want to go to chemo, I support you and I'm going to help you do that. And if you're like, nope, this isn't for us, I'm going to support you in that. Like, I remember one time I had a boxer. She was pretty young, like maybe 7, and she developed lymphoma. And so, like, the way it works at our hospital a lot of times is the client checks in for an appointment, the technician starts the appointment, kind of gets, like, oriented with what the client's goal is for that day, why they're there, and then comes back and gets the doctor. So what happened this day was that essentially, the boxer comes in, and her name's Lexi, and my technician gets her checked in, and my technician comes back, and she's just got, like, crocodile tears falling down her face, and she says, Dr. Keith, I just can't do it. She's wagging her tail, and she's happy, and she just looks great, and they want to euthanize. And I took the chart from her, and, like, to, like, figure out what patient we're talking about, because a lot of times, to be honest, like, we don't look at our schedules ahead of time because you don't have time.
Yeah.
And I said, look, here's what this dog weighed last time. This was 2 weeks ago. She's lost 8 pounds in 2 weeks. These owners don't want to see the day when her little tail and her little booty doesn't wag when she comes in. And this dog is dying. And it is okay to say goodbye before she is suffering. And I know it's hard to take a happy patient and say goodbye, but, like, sometimes that's a choice the family makes in that gray space. And
it's not the wrong choice.
It's not the wrong choice. It's a hard choice. Yep. It's never not hard. If it's not hard, like, maybe that's when you need to, like, be evaluating.
Yeah.
Whenever euthanasia becomes not hard, that's a question that you need to be soul checking on, maybe. But there's not a wrong choice when you know that you believe you're making the right decision for the pet and your family as a whole.
Yes. And this is obviously, we're talking about, like, terminal illnesses. We know that this patient will succumb to this disease. When's the time? Well, that's not the wrong time.
Another, like, true fact, one of my next appointments today, which I'm not sure how it's going to go, like, I'll probably cry before today's over on this, but it's an aggressive dog. He's perfectly healthy, but he's hurting the family and is a danger to, he's hurt another dog, and there's small children involved, and I've done those euthanasias with a heavy heart. I remember a Great Dane once that ran up behind. There was a little girl and her friend in the yard, and they were running around playing catch, and the Great Dane just came up over her shoulder and just bit her shoulder, and, like, had to take her to the hospital. And the dog had been exhibiting some, like, odd, weird, aggressive behaviors over the past few months coming up to that, and the owners were like, we can't. I mean, it's 140-pound dog, and we had to say goodbye to that dog, and it's gut-wrenching, but it's not wrong. It's also not wrong to continue to try to find a way to manage that dog, but I choose, when possible, to always just completely be supportive of the client.
Yeah, I agree, and I've been in those rooms too, where they have tried everything and it still wasn't helping the aggression, and we did have to opt to euthanize, and that those are the hardest euthanasias probably. Yeah, those are really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. But, it's a beautiful thing in general, euthanasia. Like, so those are difficult. Those are brutal. But as a whole, I want those people who are afraid of it to realize what a blessing it can be. Mm-hmm. Like, this is probably TMI, but I'm kind of a TMI person. So my dad, I've referenced a couple times in this podcast, he developed cancer, and watching him pass was the way that and this was before I was a veterinarian, so I was in vet school when he passed away. I found out he had cancer like 2 months into vet school, and he passed away the December of my second year. And watching that process was when I went, oh, this is a gift that we have in veterinary medicine, to not ask these animals to go through those last stages of the body trying to hold on when it cannot anymore. And it's a gift to be able to give them that euthanasia, that good passing, because passing is inevitable.
Yep, it is.
But the good part doesn't come for everybody.
No.
So, yeah. It's heavy.
It is heavy. It's a heavy podcast today. But
important.
And knowing that we, as veterinarians, are here to give you options and support you in what you decide on doing.
Yeah, education so that you can choose what's right for your family.
Yes. And Lap of Love, the company that Natalie referenced, has a wonderful website with a lot of awesome resources if you're currently in this situation. And
also post-situation, like grief recommendations, like how to process the grief, like all that stuff's on there.
Yeah, they have they have links to grief counseling.
Yeah.
And they also have one thing that they used to do, I'm not sure if they do it anymore, I haven't checked their website, but they used to have a calendar that you just like put a happy or sad face on it.
I love that.
It's my favorite thing to tell people when you're in that gray zone. Get a calendar, take away the thought from it. Don't like trying to calculate, oh, well, he ate 2 things of chicken today.
Yeah.
Just put a sad face or happy face. Like, what emotion did you feel like the dog or you experienced that day with how the day went?
Yeah, because our brains are so trippy at being like, so bad day, bad day, bad day, bad day, bad day, bad day, good day. Wait, never mind. We don't need to consider euthanasia. And then, like, you'll have a whole nother string of bad days.
Yeah.
But when you look at this calendar that's like 80% sad faces, you need to be like thinking about the big picture, which helps you kind of step back from the tree to see the forest.
Exactly.
So yeah.
And I love the calendar, and I've had a lot of people do that, and they've I wish I would have done that for Jack. I know I bring up Jack, but he got to the end stage where he was a body condition score, which is basically how much muscle or fat you have. 1 is none, 9 is you're very overweight. He was probably at 2. Like, he was very skinny because of his cancer. And seeing that, looking back on that, I wish I wouldn't have waited.
Yeah.
But again, you don't.
Yeah, so what was it that finally was like your moment where you were like, oh, it's time?
Yeah. He was eating well up until that last time.
Yeah.
I was gone taking finals, and I came home, and it was kind of like a light bulb where you're like,
whoa.
You come home after being gone for a second, and you go, oh no.
Yeah.
We waited.
So it was sort of stepping back from the tree to see the forest.
It totally was. Because then I, from not seeing him for a few weeks and then coming back, I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
And granted, some of that happened, like some of the weight loss happened while I was gone, obviously, because 8 pounds in 2 weeks is definitely a thing that we see. But after I got back, I called y'all. I was an assistant at the time, and I was like, I have to do it today.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, which I know we're kind of like getting low on time for our service calls, but that does bring up 2 other really important points that I want to just briefly mention, which is 1, if you're waiting, like, I know we said there's not a right or wrong time, but like if you get too close to the end and they become in a place where they're really struggling and suffering, you may find yourself in an emergency hospital somewhere you've never been before with people who are exhausted, and your dog doesn't know them and you don't know them, and it's not a great situation. So one benefit of kind of being making that decision proactively is that you have a little more control over when and where and how.
Yep.
And the other thing, like, I think about, so Lap of Love does say that you should not tell clients, and I still do it anyway, so I'm sorry, Dr. Gardner, you'll just know. You'll know. Because I think sometimes it is true. Like, clients will say that, like, I just got up and he looked at me and I just knew. And I had that experience with one of my dear, dear pets, Hadley, whom I love dearly to this day. And I just came home and I looked at him and he looked at me and I was like, okay.
Yeah. That's kind of what happened with Jack. And he was happy to see me.
Yeah.
But I was just like...
Yeah, same. But you could just see, like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, so, like, if you ever have that moment, you know...
Chills.
Yeah, like...
chills.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I almost choked up, but I didn't because I'm a grown-up. On a podcast live. So I did not cry. But, it's like, yeah, it's real and it's heavy, and we're with you in that journey. Like, sometimes we 100%. Cry during euthanasias. Mm-hmm. With you.
And we try to hold it together.
Yeah, usually I cry after you leave. If you're ever like, I can't believe she took care of him for 10 years and then didn't cry. Oh, I cried.
Yeah.
You just didn't see it.
Yeah.
So, grief is real for all of us.
It is.
But it doesn't make it less of a blessing.
Yes.
To help them pass well.
To help them pass well and comfortable.
Yeah.
Versus struggle.
Mother Nature, yeah. She's brutal at times. So, okay, anyway, if you guys ever have questions about it, reach out, because that's, it's a big deal, and we're here for you, and there's resources everywhere. Again, Lap of Love, not laps, otherwise you'll end up at a marathon site. Just one lap.
One lap.
One lap of love.
And they are awesome.
Mm-hmm. They are. Okay, we appreciate y'all and being in this with us. Have a great one. Bye.